Hola, hello, ciao. Shout out to the 10 people already in over on X. Everybody's going to be coming in over on YouTube. Shout out Andre Rodriguez. Y'all get those likes up as soon as you come in the door. This about be about try to keep this at about 30 to 40 minutes today. Happy Sunday to everybody. I got some people coming over later that I'll be we'll throw some stuff on the grill. So this will be a tighter show, a little bit 30 to 40 minutes. Try to keep it at try to keep my points as quick as possible. Brevity is the soul of wit. We'll try to keep it a little brief today. Get to the point, and more thoughts on this stuff as the week goes on. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed the fights last night. So make sure y'all hit that like button as you come in and introduce yourself. Shout out Jesus M. Saludos to you. Ennis versus Stanionis next. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about where I think we are in this whole dynamic with Boots and Bud, a division north, and 154, and should Boots stay at 147 and 168, and just how all of this ties in on a macro level and just where I'm at with it, because I'm getting a little some of the stuff, man, like I'm just getting a little weary with it. I'm just getting a little, can we just cut to the point? Can we just stop dancing around this? We all know who the guys are, so let's get to it. So that's where I'm at right now. Getting a little frustrated with the process in some of these divisions, and I'll be airing out my thoughts after last night's show, after last night's fights. Shout out to Surge. Ennis must unify versus other champs at 147. We'll talk about that and what I think. Shout out to Chocolatito, who won his fight Friday night, and we'll see where he goes. Not much to talk about as far as the fight, just a guy who's up there in age, who's clearly well past it. Well past it, because you're not supposed to be fighting younger guys in the lower weight classes the way that Chocolatito has had success there, the way Gallo has had success there at an advanced age, because you got guys throwing with high output, and it's not normal. I need people to understand this. It's not normal to be achieving what these guys have been achieving, particularly Chocolatito, at an advanced age, when they've been through this many wars, when they're fighting with this type of style against these type of styles at an advanced age. And Chocolatito against an opponent who is, I didn't even see betting odds anywhere because it was a mismatch. Homecoming fight. I worry for Chocolatito that he sticks around too long and gets plastered no matter where he goes. I do believe that he should go up to 118 and challenge one of the Japanese champions. I do believe if he stays at 115 and tries to test the waters there against a guy like Bam Rodriguez, it could end very badly for him. It can end much the way that the second Sorong Vise ended, fighting a Bam Rodriguez. And I hope it doesn't end that way. I hope we can go out on a positive note. I hope we can go out on a title at 118, something like that, or at least a title shot, and get your shine over in Japan, where people respect and adulate lower weight class fighters the way that they should be respected and adulated. Pause. No Diddy. And that's just where I'm at with the Chocolatito situation right here, where we're in territory now where it could get into dangerous waters. And I hope that they have a good plan going forward. I would just end it. But I enjoyed what I saw Friday. I always enjoy watching one of the greatest fighters of our generation fight in Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. I told you the menstrual monster been a duck ass is all bark and no bite. Another week. The menstrual monster. Edwin loves David Benavidez, and more on that in a little while. Because once again, I have some thoughts. Drunk Irishman, appreciate you rolling through. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. Hope everybody's having a blessed Sunday. Morataya fights Farmer. Going into the fight, I thought Morataya was going to stop Farmer. Going into the fight, I believe that Farmer was past it. Took 3.5 years off, I believe. Hasn't been fighting great competition. Hasn't been deep in fights recently. Hasn't been fighting great competition, as I stated, as of recently. And I thought Morataya, coming off of a poor performance, would put on a great performance here and get offensive minded against a guy in Tevin Farmer who does open up in spots, isn't super negative. And more on that in a minute as well. But Tevin Farmer was there to be hit, fought well early in the fight, but tailed off, and Morataya's pressure got to him, right? This is my problem with Morataya. And I bet him stoppage going in, and I showed y'all the receipts on over there on Twitter, on over there on Elon's X, that in the 6th round, I threw $400 on Morataya to win by decision. I thought at that point it was clear where this was trending. Morataya is likely down on the cards or even on the cards at that point, but it was starting to trend towards his fight, and it was trending towards a guy who was not going to get a stoppage. I slapped myself for not, in the 5th round, recognizing that when the odds were at plus 265. Because had I done that, I would have won more money than when I jumped on it at minus 165. Still won a good bit of money. But at that point, it was clear to me that Morataya was not going to get the decision, was not going to get the stoppage. He almost made a fool out of me because the 10th round, he caught Farmer with about a minute left, a huge shot, and had Farmer on Queer Street. But when I watch Morataya fight now, it's 2 straight performances. It's reminding me of Berlanga with Top Rank. It's reminding me of Gabe Flores Jr. with Top Rank, in that Top Rank does a good job of starting to give their fighters resistance, right? It's going to start to give them resistance, step them up to 8-round fight, step them up to 10-round fights before they get them to 12-round fights, right? And you start to see guys who are known for power, not so much Gabe Flores Jr., but Berlanga. Berlanga's got 100% KO percentage, and then they start to step them up, and what happens? The KOs start to go away. And Morataya, I think that's what we're going to see as the competition level steps up. I think we're seeing a stagnant fighter. I think we're seeing a limited fighter, and people may disagree with me on this. But the good news for Morataya is, unlike Berlanga, more of a likable guy, more of a built-in base, and an action fighter. So even if Morataya is this limited fighter who can't win big title fights, who cannot get knockouts, and his style doesn't translate to the top fights in the division, there are still fights there to where you can match this guy and he can be in fun fights. And there are fighters that like that we need in the sport that we've been losing because we've made it this thing to where everybody needs to win a title. If you don't win a title, you suck. If you don't fight the way you fought when you were coming up and knock everybody out, you suck. And what I'm saying is limited fighters are good. Fighters with lower ceilings but fun styles are good. And we need to embrace these fighters, and we need to match them correctly. So Morataya, put him in there with guys. He wants to step up, fight the title fights in a weight class, fight the top fights, let him have it. Move up the rankings, let him have it. And if he falls short, guess what? You can still bring him down a notch. Fight him against guys like Cambosos, whoever, other limited guys in the division. And these guys are going to put on great, fun fights for you, action fights for you. As long as everybody's realistic about the situation, it can work. And I think that's the conversations we need to start having with Morataya. I'm starting to see the limitations there. I'm starting to see the heavy-handed stuff that was working when he was fighting other competition beneath this, and he was looking otherworldly against guys like Jeremy Hill. And now that he's stepping up against the Tevin Farmers of the world, you know, more savvy pros, vets, guys that have been around the block, not great guys, not great fighters, but decent fighters who have experience and will show resistance. That stuff that was there in fights against Jeremy Hill, I think you're going to see less of that. You're going to see less of that. And I think he's a limited fighter at the top. But unlike Berlanga, there's still going to be a market for this guy. There's still going to be a market for him, even limited. That's the good news here. It's just everybody has to be realistic about the situation. And if he continues to put on performances like this, fellas, against this level of competition, then because there were openings there. Tevin Farmer was negative, but he wasn't super negative. Like he wasn't that negative. He wasn't De Los Santos negative. There were openings there that Morataya didn't take advantage of that were there. Um, and that's just where I'm at with it. I put out this tweet earlier. I said, me and D Style Boxing have been on this soapbox for a while. Penalize tactical clinching quickly. Get the ring sizes smaller. Reward fighters who make the fights, and let's see which of these defensive fighters are slick when they are forced into fights. That's what I was happy with last night watching the Morataya fight. Seven Farmer wasn't the most negative fighter in the world, but at the same time, he was negative. At the same time, he was using what's called tactical clinching. At the same time, he was bending and breaking the Marcus Queensberry rules. We've gone to a place, fellas, where this stuff is excused, this stuff is accepted, it's tolerated, and it should not be. As boxing fans, we should be calling for more of this tactical clinching. They need to start enforcing the rules. You should not be able to fight, throw a couple of shots, use some lateral movement, then break the pace, clinch, 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 clinch. And that's what Tevin Farmer was doing last night. And I was cheering, openly cheering in the 8th round in my living room. Thank you. Thank you. More of this, please. More of the taking points away for tactical clinching. More of taking points away for this constant holding. Vladimir Klitschko, late in his career, he was in some fights where the referees were starting to enforce that clinching. It wasn't just that Vladimir Klitschko was getting up there in age. It was the referees were finally starting to enforce some of this 1-2 hold. They never did it with Andre Ward. They never enforced the rules against Andre Ward. 1-2 headbutt, 1-2 hold, 1-2 hold. I want to see how many of these great defensive fighters, these slick fighters, are actually slick. I want to see how many of them are actually great defensive fighters. I don't believe that a lot of these modern great defensive fighters are actually great defensive fighters. I think a lot of them are allowed to break the rules and tactically clinch and break the pace and break the pace and break the pace and chop up the fight. I want referees to start enforcing the rules quickly, sternly, early in fights. No clinching. Do not clinch. Stop. Stop holding. Stop holding. Stop holding. Stop holding. And after a couple of times, you take a point, and guess what? The holding's going to stop. And then the guy who's actually trying to make the fight is rewarded, which should be the case. I'm not saying guys shouldn't be out there trying to be great defensive fighters. I'm not the dude, the Roman Coliseum, say tear his head off. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is I want equal rules. I want the rules on the books enforced. I want to see fighters who are trying to make the fights, trying to entertain the boxing fans rewarded. And I want the guys who are fighting super negative penalized. And I want to see the guys who are fighting with this lower degree of difficulty forced into fights where they're fighting with a higher degree of difficulty. We talk a lot about Bam Rodriguez fighting with a high degree of difficulty because he's keeping his hands free. He's fighting on the inside. And then you guys, mostly American fighters in the middle to upper weight classes, fighting with a lower degree of difficulty by constantly clinching. They're taught in gyms, don't fight on the inside. Hold, 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 and they're getting away with it. So forgive me if I wasn't cheering openly and loudly when Tevin Farmer was penalized yesterday in this fight for tactically clinching. Even if there are guys who are bigger abusers of this, man, I love seeing this. We should see this at least one weekend. We should see once a weekend guys being made example of for other fighters out there who have been doing this and saying, we need to get fans back in. We need to attract fans. And the only way we can do that is to make for more exciting fights. I wish across the board we could do something with ring sizes, 18 by 18, less room for guys to run around the ring, stuff like that. I want to make it easier for the guys who are actually trying to make fights happen. I want to make it easier and reward guys who are actually trying to please the fans and make fights. And make it more difficult for fighters who are fighting with this low degree of difficulty by constantly holding. constantly clinching, tactical clinching, tactical clinching. It's a frustrating thing to watch. And I'm not going to apologize for that. Not going to apologize for that. So I'm watching Boots last night. That's my thoughts on Chocolatito Morataya. I'm watching Boots last night fight David Evanesyan. And I said going into the fight on the round table and in the podcast before, excuse me. Uh, um, I was betting Boots 1 through 6. And the reason I was betting Boots 1 through 6 is I didn't think that the hometown curse was going to affect him. I think he's a different type of fighter. He's in his prime. He seems like he's disciplined. It's interesting. Like the people around him that have surrounded him and moved his career don't really match who he is as a fighter. And that's the frustrating thing. I think he's a Philly fighter. I think he's interested in seek and destroy. He's disciplined, and he was going to come to show out for his fans. 14,000 plus there. And from the people that I know who were in the building, who were texting me last night, giving me the intel, those people were there early. They were in there an hour before the fight. They were there. They were there, and they showed out, and they showed up for him. And I believe that he was going in there to show out for them. He's capable of it. And on top of that, I didn't think Evanesyan was the type of opponent that would be able to take advantage of Boots' ring rust early on in the fight and Boots maybe making some mistakes in the ring, or Boots fighting with a more aggressive style, being that he wants to entertain and showing openings that David Evanesyan was not going to be able to take advantage of. David Evanesyan was having some good success on the offensive end, landing some shots, right? When Boots opened himself up, but you could tell the firepower was different. You can tell one guy was outgunned big time. I mean, Boots is landing hellacious shots. David Evanesyan is landing shots, but they don't have the same effect on Boots. Boots is just walking through it because he doesn't respect what's coming back. He doesn't respect Evanesyan's power, and he's willing to take 1 or 2 shots to land 3 or 4 bigger ones. Philly fighter. We've seen this from Meldrick Taylor in the past, right? He's willing to take shots in order to give you back bigger shots. And that may have backfired against Meldrick Taylor against a guy like Chavez, right? And it may do the same against Boots. But last night that wasn't going to come into play. And we mentioned that. And that's why I like the trend of Evanesyan. When he does get stopped, he gets stopped right around the same time. And we mentioned that. He got stopped by Bud in the 6th round. He got stopped by Evanesyan in the 5th round. That was the trend. And he gets stopped right in the middle of those two in this fight. Late 5th round, he gets stopped. Middle to late 5th round, he gets stopped against Mean Machine. 6th round, he gets stopped by Bud. Right in between that, in between the 5th and 6th round, that was the trend. He gets stopped by Boots. And you saw this start to come into play. Look, you noticed it right away when Boots landed that first power jab. Evanesyan felt it. He felt it. We talked about Evanesyan's survivability skills not being great when he does get hurt. And that stuff showed up. He clearly had some facial damage, and the corner did a great job of just saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to put him in this guy with this guy because this guy does have a killer instinct. He hunts. And that's what I appreciate about Boots Ennis. He hunts. And let me say this too, because people fall into this trap. They did it with Bud Crawford. When Bud Crawford fought Evanesyan, he got caught with some shots, right? Some of the similar shots, not as much. And the Errol Spence fans did this thing where they would slow down the footage of that, slow down the video of that, and say, what happens when Errol Spence catches Bud with these same shots that Evanesyan caught him with, that Mean Machine caught him with, that Gamboa caught him with? But what happens in reality is these guys fight different to the level of competition, number one, and they fight differently against different styles. If you think Boots is going to fight the same way against Bud that he fought last night against Evanesyan, you got another thing coming. He's going to fight up to the level of competition. He's going to fight with a different style. He's not going to go in there head first the same way. It's just not going to happen. But let's start off with this. And I tweeted about this earlier, and it irked me. And me and D Style talk about this all the time, how people just like, we just can't have nice things in the boxing world, and people just want to complain for the sake of complaining. And it happened last night. And my tweet goes something like this: y'all complained about Shakur not letting his hands go for a week straight. And I agree with that. I complained about it. Let your hands go. And if you watch after the Shakur fight, there's footage of Bud in the locker room with Shakur, and Shakur saying, I did this, I did that. And Bud's telling him, you walked him down, you're using your feet, but your hands are not moving at the same time. Your feet are moving, your hands are not moving. And you forgot the jab. He's telling Shakur the deficiencies that he showed in the ring on fight night. So we all complained about Shakur just not being aggressive, not letting his hands go, right? Being boring. But Boots is now too offensive for these same people. I've come to the conclusion that some of you just like to complain. Embrace exciting and skilled fighters. If Boots falls on his face when he gets the big fight, so be it. But let's see it. Then let's see it again. Fighters get hit and lose. It happens. I appreciate fighters who try to entertain the paying customers. And that's what happened last night. Is I'm watching, and the atmosphere comes through the screen. I'm watching, and unfortunately, it's a live rapper performance. And we hate the live rapper ring entrances, right? They're as bad as the, almost as bad as the reggaeton ring entrances, which are terrible, the worst in boxing. But you see Boots come out, and he's smiling from ear to ear. He sees it like this is what it should have been for years now. 14,000 plus. My hometown has shown out for me. And I couldn't believe it, fellas. Like, I cannot believe. And people explain this away for years. The mental midgets that this dude had running his career. Telling us that, and we're saying it for years, how about you put this dude in a main event in Philadelphia? He's a Philly fighter. Fellas, I'm watching this last night. I'm beside myself. Beside myself. Still right now. Like, got family in the other room. I'm trying not to scream. I'm beside myself that this dude has not fought in Philly in 6 years. He's a Philly fighter, and he embodies Philly fighter. He's marketable. The guy's got a great personality, great smile. He's a likable dude. He's exciting. He's offensive minded. He wants to seek and destroy, and he's from Philly. And they don't fight the dude in Philly for 6 years, and I've been saying this year after year after year. And they're saying, well, you don't understand the business of boxing. We need to put this guy on undercards of people that are actually not as good as him on the West Coast at Indian resorts. And people are explaining this behavior away. And it's mental midgetry. They will explain away anything. The people who have been running this dude's career up until this last fight have been mental midgets. They are short-minded, short-sighted businessmen, snake oil salesmen. They don't care about anything except getting a quick dollar for themselves. And unfortunately, it's at the expense of fighters who, unfortunately, youth is wasted on the young. Unfortunately, years later, they get along in their careers, usually year 7, year 8, year 9, and they look around and they say, why am I not a star? I don't know. Maybe it's because you're a Philly fighter and you're marketable and you don't fight in Philly ever. And you're fighting. And you're fighting, fellas, on undercards of people that you're more talented than in places where it does not make sense. You fought 4 months. You fought 4 minutes. 4 minutes in all of year 2022. And I believe that was on the West Coast. Insane amounts of dumb. Insane amounts of dumb. And nobody seemed to be pointing it out except us. And it's like, how are you not seeing this? How are you not seeing it? And then they just constantly whine. Why isn't he a star? It's because of this. No, it's because he's not fighting in Philadelphia and he's a Philly fighter. How about you start there? So the dude last night, I'm saying finally, thank you, Eddie. Thank you. Finally, we got some adults in the room. How about this? How about you just fight the dude in Philly? Put him in Philly. How about that? Against anybody. Against anybody. Have him fight my dead grandma. Anybody. Just put him in Philly. How about you just start there? And it doesn't matter the opponent. Cody Crowley, David Evanesyan on 4 weeks notice. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. 14,000 plus show up. Duh. Hello. And these are the geniuses, right? These are the dudes like back there and they're doing such complex work and trying to piece these fights together and trying to fit triangle blocks into square holes, just trying to do it all for you. And they just, you don't understand how difficult. How about you just fight the dude in Philly against anybody? Anybody. 14,000 plus show up. Duh. Hello. It's frustrating, but at the same time, last night it's like, thank you. Thank you, Eddie. 14,000 plus show up. And I'm happy for the dude. I'm happy for him because he finally woke up. He got some adults in the room. And they're there now. But I'm watching the performance, and to me, it's an offensive showcase. To me, it's clearly a guy who had some ring rust early, as he stated, and he confirmed that after. He's missing wide with some shots early on, throwing some wild punches, right? But it's evident early that he doesn't respect the power coming back at him. It's evident early that he wants to get in there and get this over with. It's evident early that going into the fight, they said, we want to stop him. They clearly stated the goal. We want to stop him earlier than Bud stopped him. And triangle theory does not work. We all know that. It doesn't work. But as I stated before, leading up to Canelo versus Munguia, Munguia made a statement by going into Benavidez's backyard and selling close to, if not more, having close to or if not more fans in the stands than Benavidez did, and at the same time beating a Canelo opponent better than Canelo did. And that's a way to make a statement if you want a certain fight. Even though the triangle theory doesn't work, that works. That works. It's one of the most effective ways to get a fight that you want if you pinpoint a certain guy. So I'm watching last night and I see a guy who is athletically gifted, who is offensively gifted, has some defensive inefficiencies, has some defensive weaknesses, leaves holes in his game, but I'm seeing a dude who's exciting and I'm a fan of. We don't know what it's going to translate to at the top. We don't. Because we haven't seen it yet. We're still relying on the eye test. We still can't put him on top 10 pound for pound rankings. All of that is true, but we clearly have something here. We clearly have a Philly fighter who fights like a Philly fighter, who is offensively gifted. And especially coming off of last weekend, fellas. Last weekend, I'm watching Shakur, and it's everything that's wrong about the sport. And it's a guy who doesn't care about the fans. It's a guy who could care less. Could care less. If you show up to his fight and you're actually entertained. If you spend hard-earned money in this current economy where everything costs so much and people are living paycheck to paycheck, and then people, they just want to go on a Saturday night and see a good fight. They want to be entertained by a hometown hero, right? And Shakur goes there and they try to explain it away like this is some sort of defensive genius, but the dude goes in the ring and drops a big dump, a big juicy deuce in the middle of the ring in Newark, New Jersey. To where, look, it doesn't lie, fellas. Like 90% of the audience leaves before the final bell. And then you take the following weekend and you see Boots Ennis, hometown fight. And the trend is the hometown fighters have been disappointing, if not losing. And Boots goes in there and he puts on an offensive show. Boots goes in there and you see it. He's leaving the locker room, walking to the ring with the terrible mumble rap, right? But he's just looking at the crowd and he's having the time of his life. He's like, I've arrived. My hometown has showed up for me. And Boots is cut from the cloth to where I'm going to go out and I'm going to put on a show for these guys. So forgive me as a boxing fan if that doesn't excite me. And forgive me if I don't get frustrated when the first thing I see when I go on Twitter, like this should be the first thing. Wait till the next morning or send another tweet before you do this about how fun it was. The first thing I see from people is he gets hit a lot. Boy, does he get hit a lot. Boy, he's going to be exposed. Oh my God, he's going to be exposed. Can we not enjoy the night? Can we not enjoy a guy who wants to go in there and just destroy the opposition? Can we not enjoy a guy who has 14,000 plus in the arena showing up for him and he says, you know what? I'm going to put on a show for y'all. It may not be perfect. It may not be seen as a technical, right? And these same people levying these claims are the same ones that levied these claims against Bud. Coming up, Bud gets hit a lot. Boy, you know, Bud stops guys, but he gets hit a lot before. And now these dudes are in Bud's corner. Saying Bud would destroy this guy. But I thought Bud got hit a lot too. And I've come to the conclusion that these dudes just can't, they just want to complain. They just want to complain. That's all they want to do is just complain. Last weekend, it was Shakur's too defensive, and I agree with that. But now it's Boots isn't defensive enough. Boots is going to get exposed. Boots get hit way too much, and it's about hit and don't get hit, and that guy gets hit a lot. How about we enjoy a guy who fills up an arena? The arena gets there early. They're there an hour, hour and a half before the fight. The place is almost full. Marketable, likable, doesn't speak down to the fans, doesn't say that you guys just don't appreciate what I'm doing. You don't appreciate the art of what I'm doing. He doesn't have to do any of that because this does the talking. These do the talking. I don't need to do to be perfect. And I don't need him to be perfect to get the fights. Let me make sure this microphone's straight first. Let's see. All right, we're good. Every once in a while it comes unplugged. Let's read the tweet. Boots and Benavidez have made some terrible business decisions in the past, and they have. Boots and Benavidez have both made terrible business decisions in the past. Who they surrounded themselves with, the whole nine. Both have had awful public messaging and incompetent people surrounding them throughout their careers, and they have. They've had some incompetent people, short-sighted, short-term thinking over long-term thinking, not strategic. None of it. None of it. I'm just convinced that they're looking to get a quick buck after each fight, quick buck just for themselves to pocket, and they're not worried about the long-term growth of the fighter. They're not worried about the long-term growth of their product. None of it. And Boots and Benavidez have been victims of this. And Boots is waking up. Benavidez not so much, unfortunately. He's still got the same people surrounding his career. He's signed extensions with these people, and he's had people warning him, you shouldn't have these people around you. David, you should not have these people around you. Your PR, your messaging is off. It's terrible. You're doing a bad job at that. And Boots has listened. And Boots got some of the bad apples out, and he's got some adults in the room. And things are now moving. And hopefully David Benavidez gets there at some point too. Both also have some glaring holes in their game, which is true. particularly David Benavidez. I think David Benavidez is a sloppy fighter in spots. And outside of 168, unlike Boots, I think Boots' game can translate up to 160. I do. I think it could go up several weight classes. I don't think the same of David Benavidez. I think David Benavidez's whole aura is 168 and being the bigger guy. But he has some clear sloppiness in his game, in my opinion. And um, that's just how I feel. But both present some stylistic problems for the top dogs in and around their weight classes. And that's also true, fellas. Despite what you think about their deficiencies, Boots presents a problem for Bud. He does. I'm not saying he beats him. I'm not saying I would pick him to beat him, but he does present some problems for Bud that the other guys in and around 154 do not. And I think Benavidez clearly presents some stylistic issues for Canelo that the other fighters at 168 do not. I think, like, we should all be at that point. To me, that's not debatable. That's not debatable. We can debate who did this to get us to this point and whose fault it is, all that stuff. But what's not debatable to me at this point, that if Boots says, I want the fight at 154, he goes to that right there, because Turkey Al-Sheikh calls him, and they FaceTime last night with Eddie Hearn right there. They all FaceTime and say, let's do this fight. If Canelo versus Bud falls through, let's do this fight. To me, that's the fight that makes the most sense. And it's to me, it's the fight that, look, I don't know where Virgil's at 154. He hasn't fought a fight at 154 yet. People keep saying this, 154. He hasn't fought at 154 yet. He's fought at 156, 157. He hasn't made 154 yet. What we've learned this year, one of the things is those last 2 or 3 pounds are difficult. We learned it with Janibek. Janibek is in the hospital. Can't make the weight. Those last few pounds are terrible to make. Terrible. And they make you a different fighter. They make you a more depleted fighter. We learned it with Ryan. Ryan said, I'm willing to pay $1.5 million to not even try to lose those last 3 pounds. So we don't know. We haven't seen Mel in how long? We don't know. Like Tim Tszyu is coming off a loss to Fundora. Terrible cut to me right now. And look, if Boots says, I want to stay at, it's on him. If he says, I want to stay at welterweight and we'll fight Stanionis, if they want to do that, it's fine. It's on them. But what I'm saying is, as a boxing fan, to me, this is becoming clearer what the picture is and what we need to see. Canelo and Bud are both first ballot Hall of Famers whose legacies are already cemented. Yeah. Both all-time greats, despite what their lunatic haters suggest. And I've said this over and over. Their legacies are cemented. They're both all-time greats. You'll have the haters say, no, this guy, no. All-time greats, legacy cemented, first ballot Hall of Famers. That's Canelo, that's Bud. That's clear. To me, it's clear. But if you stick around, you still need to fight the fights. It's not acceptable to say, I've done this, I've done that. So as a reward, and look, you get equity for doing that. You're given a little more forgiveness to say, I'm going to do this fight now, but then I'll give you that. There's some forgiveness, there's some equity, but you still need to fight the fights if you're going to stick around. You have to. It's a sport at the end of the day. You have to fight the fights if you stick around. Have to. There's no getting around it. Have to. Let's make it as simple as possible going forward. This is where I'm at. I'm worn out with it. I'm worn out with the constant conversations. I'm worn out. I'm not doing this thing that the other content creators do to get the clicks up, because they do. And I've been told by these content creators, they've told me personally, I love when these fights don't happen because I can drive up my clicks and then we can do these battles and do these tribal wars. And then I can I don't want to hear it. I don't have the patience for it. I'm done. I'm out. I'm done. This is where I'm at with it. It's Canelo should fight Benavidez next. Bud should fight Boots after Madrimov. Let's cut the crap and get to the point. Stop with the mental gymnastics. It's time. The fights need to be fought. They need to be fought. They need to be fought. You've heard me say what I said at the top of this tweet. Benavidez has made some abysmal business decisions. David Benavidez has the worst of the worst people around him. Some of the same culprits that kept Boots out of Philadelphia for 6 years. And you watched this fight last night. You say, how in the hell could anybody respect the people that stopped this from happening for 6 years? It's simple. It's simple. They try to make it complex, but it's actually simple. It's simple. And it's where I'm at with Bud now. I've been a Bud supporter for over a decade. I was the one on here, not to toot my own horn, but I have to preface this because people are going to claim that I'm a secret Bud hater. I'm a closet Bud hater. It's none of that. And it pains me to say this stuff. I was the one 11, 12 years ago when y'all were hyping up Adrian Broner when Adrian Broner was 5 or 6 in the Ring magazine pound for pound list and somewhere around the same on ESPN. And I'm looking at this baffled. Him. And I said it in videos. The guy from Omaha, Nebraska, around the same weight class is better than, he's way better than him. Just watch. And they're saying, we don't know that yet because he hasn't fought the fight. Watch. Wait, watch. And what happened? Where are we now? And I was saying this stuff before. Some of these new age, brand new Bud super fans were even following boxing. And you see these guys on Twitter, on X now, and now they're using Bud for all their little battles, right, against other fighters, as a pawn against their other fighters, right? And a lot of these guys complain about Canelo's super fans and how whiny they are, and Canelo doesn't have, and they're doing the same thing. They're guilty of the same thing. The fights need to be fought, and the new age Bud fans like to act like this dude walks on water and he's invincible. And look, man, up to this point, I can't see a dude. I can't see a dude beating Bud, even at 37. I can't. But these dudes will act like they're walking on water. But when Boots' name is brought up, just an observation. They talk about Boots' flaws, all this stuff. But I sense that there's a little bit of fear there from the new age Bud fans. For me, I don't care. I don't care if my favorite fighters lose. I'm cut from that cloth. Like, dude, I've been following this sport since the early 90s. Our fighters fought each other. We know what it's like to go into big fights and say, I don't know if my favorite fighter is going to win this fight. This is a tough one, but I'm glad it's happening. We know how to take L's and move on. We don't blame people who have nothing to do with the situation for our favorite fighter's L. We don't. Took a L. There's no reason to do it. He took a L. He fought the fight. Let's move on. What's the next one? Support the fighters who fight the fights. But I'm seeing dudes with some weirdo energy. And to me, the picture's becoming clear as time goes on, which ones are the fights. I'm not saying Canelo versus Bud can't happen. But to me, there's some business that needs to be taken care of before that happens. And I'm at a point now, look, you heard me say, if Eubank Jr. happens, certain it has to be under certain conditions. Like if he wants to do that for a tune-up, that's fine. Big's got to be behind it. But look, I'm worn out. I'm worn out with it. I'm tired. The fights need to be fought. And the fights that make sense need to be fought. If you're going to stick around, they need to be fought. And to me, there are better fights on the table than Canelo versus Bud at this moment. We can always get to that. To me, it seems novelty-ish. And at the same time, it seems like, to me, it seems like it's being explained away by certain corners of these fan bases, like certain, like extreme parts of these fan bases. This fight's being explained away because I think they fear what is in and around those weight classes for those fighters at the time. That's where I'm at. I have no problem calling out some of the other fans underneath my tent. Got no problem with that. I don't need to stay on code. Do what you want with it. I don't care. It's becoming clearer to me. Canelo versus Benavidez needs to happen before Canelo versus Bud. Bud versus Boots needs to happen before Canelo versus Bud. It should. It should, if this was a proper sport. That's where I'm at. That's the fights. That's the fights. I'm well aware of the deficiencies of Benavidez and Boots. I'm well aware that they're flawed fighters. I'm well aware that they have mental midgets running their careers, and still to this day, Benavidez, good Lord, that team is a mess. They are an absolute mess. If there's a publicist, the publicist needs to be fired. If there's somebody running their PR, they need to be fired. He needs to get adults in that room, and right now he doesn't. He doesn't have adults in the room. All that being said, that fight's still makeable. All that being said, they need to get that right, and that fight needs to happen. That's it. That's it. I don't know what else to say, man. Like, I'm worn out with it. I'm not going to sit here and have these conversations. I'm not going to sit here as a content creator and drive up clicks by saying, "Oh, the Benavidez fans suck, and y'all need to enter them and all that." I'm not going to do this thing where Boots doesn't deserve the fight because Boots got hit against Evanescence. Bud got hit against Evanescence too, fellas. You did. Go back and watch the fight. But this is what these fighters do, Bud and Boots. They're cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways. They're willing to sacrifice some of their defense to get you out of there quick. And in doing so, they're actually, as D-Styles brought up, better defensive fighters because they get hit less. Why? Because how many times did Boots get hit between round 6 and 12 last night? 0. Sounds like pretty good defense to me. How many times? How many times did Williams Zepeda get hit last weekend between rounds 4 and 12? 0. The least dangerous opponent is the one laying on the canvas. It's great defense. It's great defense knowing that guy can't hit you. Can't hit me now. Fight's over. I'm going home. We're going to get some Modelo's. We're going to go party. Fight's over. Shakur can go coast his way for 12 rounds. Whatever he wants to do, we're going home. We're done. I'm done. Clocked out early. Got my guy out of there. Imagine the war that would be Bud versus Boots. Imagine the war that would be Canelo versus Benavidez. And that's another thing. Canelo versus Bud stylistically actually plays out. I'm not saying it would be a good fight. It plays out to be a chess match. Bud and Boots wouldn't be a chess match. That fight would break out quick. Canelo versus Benavidez wouldn't be a chess match. The fight would break out. Make the damn fights, man. I'm tired. I'm tired of hearing it. Tired of hearing everybody whine. Whine. Make the damn fights. Let's see what's what. You have a great and blessed rest of the weekend. God bless. Peace.